All right, good morning, social media friends and family. Today I get to have a conversation with none other than the author of the Mosaic, Daniel Levin. He will be one of the speakers for our upcoming Mystics, Minds, Sages, and Rock and Rollers conference, where science meets spirit. Danny will be discussing with us the topics that he's going to go over or that he's going to share with us at the conference. And then I am really, really curious to find out why he chose the word listen. And then hear more about that. But before I do that, I want to read a short bio because he's done so many things with his life, and I am really, really excited to be sharing with him this conversation this morning. So Danny walked away from an opportunity to run a billion-dollar business to find happiness and inner peace. His life has been a combination of massive victories and incredible defeat. He left the seminary one day, being ordained as a rabbi, and then became a monk for 10 years. He has practiced meditation for over 45 years. He has run a restaurant, a publishing house, a market, a meditation retreat, has owned and run a clothing company, a branding company, and a coaching business. But all of this prepared him for his fourth published book, The Mosaic, which I bought, I love, and it's an incredible book. This is a fable about how to reconnect in a life that has experienced disconnection. It is about seeing what we don't see and listen to those that no one listens to. Levin is a storyteller, and a beautiful story he weaves touching the heart and touches the heart and soothes the soul. So welcome, Danny. I am so excited that I get to be in your circle.
Wow, and I just want to meet that guy that you just spoke about. That guy sounds incredible. But
That's
he
you,
never,
that's you.
whoever that guy was that you spoke about, he never had the insight to come up with the title of a conference as good as the one you just came up with. I mean, I love that. How magnetic is that conference title?
Yeah, when I was reading through it, I was like, wow, how am I? Because there's so much stuff online that for you. And
Yes.
just a combination of everything. And I'm always just really grateful that a friend of mine introduced me to you. I think it was maybe almost a year ago.
Yes.
Martin Lopez.
Yes.
And we actually did an online conversation on Be Live. And I was just thrilled back then, as I am now, to just, like I said, be in your circle. And
it's my thrill. You're thrilled, but I'm thrilled. It's my thrill to be in your circle and be at your conference.
You're so sweet. So tell us how you came up, or you wanted to focus on the word listen, because one of the things that I did when I was having a conversation with a group of friends about having this Mystics, Minds, Sages, and Rock and Rollers conference was that I wanted everyone to come up with the word that resonated with them and that they would focus on for the conference. And I was really interested to find out what your word would be. And at the end of the day, you came up with the word listen. So what are, when we have people show up to the conference, what is it that you're going to impart in them with pertaining to the word listen? And what can we hope to hear from you at the conference?
If I can do my job well, which who knows if I will be able to do, because in that moment, we'll see what happens. My desire would be to turn the telescope around, that instead of having someone speak from the stage into people that just are there to listen, we have an opportunity. There'll be 150 people there that are brilliant people, that have creative ideas, that have the ability to change the world, that are coming to see people that are just, and congregate together with others of similar mind. Why not listen to what they have to say? And so my goal is, in a world where everybody's talks so much, and I'm the biggest talker, my goal is to start to listen to people, to hear what it is people would really want to say if they didn't have to scream and yell and destroy. I have the honor of having a 30-year-old developmentally delayed daughter. Over the 30 years, I have to tell you, it hasn't always been my honor. I love her to death, but most of these white hairs and beards come from chaotic things that have gone on. when she speaks, because she doesn't speak like you and I, people don't understand her. But over the course of years, I do understand her most of the time. But when she speaks and I don't understand her, what she does is she yells. Mm-hmm. And she thinks it's the volume that I didn't get, but it's not the volume. Mm-hmm. Most of the times, although to her credit, sometimes when she screams and says it louder, she changes her pronunciation, and I do understand a little bit more, but most times not. Mm-hmm. When she screams and I don't understand her, then what happens is she tantrums. Mm-hmm. And then there's really no chance. Then I'm really just trying to contain her, hold her, love her, tell her I'm here, I want to listen to her. But most of the time I don't understand anything at that point. Yeah. And then what happens is she'll try and attack. She'll try and either bite me or rip my shirt or do something because she's that frustrated. Mm-hmm. Well, Adriana, what I realized in watching my daughter behave is that every single person I meet, they can be the head of a government, they can be the CEO of a company, they can be employees, they can be family members, they can be my own kids, they can be my own wife, does exactly the same thing when they don't get heard. When they speak and they don't get heard, they yell. When they yell and they don't get heard, they create a scene. When they create a scene and they don't get heard, they destroy something. It could be a marriage, a building, a business, a person's reputation. And so I realized the simplest thing in the whole world, it doesn't take any degree, it's just to listen. Because every single person that I've ever met, whether they're the poorest of the poor or the richest of the rich, they want to be loved and accepted. They want to be listened to and heard. Mm-hmm. And they want to be validated and acknowledged for having those points of view. Not one person that I ever met, and I'm almost 65, not one person in the 64 and almost 65 years that I've been here has said to me, Danny, I need you to agree with me. They don't. And some of my best friends have the most fakakid belief systems you'd ever want to imagine. But we love each other. Mm-hmm. And in that love for each other, we're able to do things together. We're able to see the places where we're similar, not the places where we're different.
That's amazing. That's really amazing that there's such deep insight in your relationship with your daughter. I've seen pictures of her online and stuff, and that you've been so kind to share with everyone. And that's really deep inside. I was really fortunate when I was in college. Every summer I worked at a camp where I helped kids with developmental disabilities. And I can tell you that was the most amazing, and I'm so grateful for those experiences, for those summers, because right after those summers of working with these kids, I went into the military. And people talk about the military and boot camp being really hard, but I tell you what, those summers I spent with these kids with autism and cerebral palsy and just all different types of things went on with them, that was the most difficult part. And I just grew as an individual. And so when you talk about your daughter, I can understand to a certain level, because of those experiences that every day I'm grateful for. And I love that. I love that you're saying that you want to go to the conference and not necessarily do all the talking and speaking. And I will have 2 microphones at each end of the hall, so there will be an opportunity for people to engage. So I'm excited to hear how you're going to drive the conversation.
Yeah, I am excited to hear it too, because I haven't really done it yet, but I love the idea of it. And just to close up the little package we created with you and me just talking here, I have so much respect for people who, out of the kindness of their heart, help people with developmental delays. Because I'm a dad, I had to do it. She's my daughter. It turned out that I loved doing it. It was the greatest gift I was ever given. But I would have never in a million years chosen to do it. But for people who choose to do it, I think they're like next to God in heaven. I think there's just this place that's reserved for these beautiful hearts. But I would like to ask, what was when you talk about it being harder than going into the military, what was the part of it that was so hard, just out of interest?
The hard part was that as an 18-year-old, I had to come to terms with the fact that there was an entire population being unserved, and that just broke my heart as an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
It was too hard for me to bear at the time, and seeing how little resources.
It even affects you right now as you're talking about it. You got
Yeah.
a little fucked up.
And then meeting the parents, there was some kids that at the time, I mean, this was 20 years ago, where the kids were being diagnosed with attention deficit. And, these kids, for me, I was like, well, I don't see a lot of stuff going on with them, right? I'm like, they seem to be just regular 7-8-year-olds, but they were so hyperactive. And I remember talking to the parents, and they had given up on their kids, that had put them away in a place where they would take care of them. And my heart would go out, because I'm like, why is this happening? And then at that time, because I was so young, not being able to understand that some of these women, they needed to work and take care of their other children, so they couldn't deal with these particular kids. And just me spending 3 months with them out in the woods, in some camp up in Cupertino, and my heart just would go out. And it was, I think it moved, it changed me forever. And, even now,
yeah, no, I can hear it.
I see that there's more resources. I have a friend in town, Matthew Cox, who runs a program where he helps kids with disabilities. And I just love him, because I love the work he does. And throughout the years, I've seen there's been more resources, but I can definitely say, from what I know, there's just not enough resources for this population. And my heart goes out.
Yeah.
So
I so appreciate you sharing that, because one of the things that I really am about to set out on, and I will be on journey when the conference happens, so I'll be able perhaps to share a little bit of what I discover, is that I'm about to take a 1-year journey across America. And if I can bear with this old body and painful body, if I can bear doing what I've been given the mission to do, is I really want to just listen to the voices of those people who don't feel heard. And when I thought about it originally, I thought about their voices like my daughters, or their voices like poor people, or homeless people, or minorities, or whatever it is. But I sat and I listened, and I realized my wife says, you listen to everybody, but you're not listening to me right now. I don't feel heard by you, right? My kid says to me, I go to school and they're used to putting square pegs in square holes, and I'm a round peg, and nobody listens to what I have to say, and that's why I'm not getting good grades, because I don't want to do it the way they're doing it. I wanted them to understand me and try and help me to understand it the way I understand it, because I'm super intelligent. I just don't do it the way they do it. I work with CEOs of companies who tell me that it's lonely at the top, because they can't really tell people who they are or what they feel, because they'll lose the respect of the people that work with them.
Right.
I listen to employees in those same companies tell me there's not an atmosphere of trust here, so we can't speak up. We can't say anything that we really want to say. We have to just say things that are okay to say. And it made me think, we live in a world where nobody's actually saying what they want to say. We live in a world like my daughter, who is not able to communicate the simple things that she wants to say. Everybody's having that same pandemic experience. And what would happen if we just held the space for people to be able to say what they truly want to say? Because my daughter, when she tantrums or attacks, that's not what she really wants to say. That's her just trying to get my attention. And so often now, people are trying to get our attention so badly, they've forgotten what they actually want to say.
Right.
Because they're spending so much time over here doing things to get the attention. You listen to a political debate, or you listen to the Republicans and Democrats speaking, they don't listen to each other. They're talking over each other. There's no space, no matter which side you're on.
They just want sound bites.
They want sound bites, and they want to be heard. Every single person wants to be heard. But in order to be heard, somebody has to listen. And so what I want to just do is hold the space for people to say, if you didn't have to scream, if you didn't have to disrupt, if you didn't have to destroy, what is it you truly want to say? And I'm going to create a documentary of people saying of the voice of the voiceless, saying what they would love to say, but have never been given the opportunity to do so.
I can't wait to see that. I think that's going to be an amazing journey.
And maybe we can film some of it at your event. Maybe we can have people have the opportunity to come up and film 1 minute, of what we're doing. How cool would that be?
That'll be amazing. That'll be great. I would love that. And I really resonate with you saying that sometimes, because nobody ever listens, that you do get lost in just saying nothing. And I've been a victim of that, where for so many years it was like I really believed in my heart that nobody was listening, so it didn't matter. And it took me years, through a lot of just tuning in with who I am as a person, to say, you know what, it does matter. What I have to say is important. And I remember telling myself, even if nobody listens, it doesn't matter. It only matters that I speak my truth, that I say what's on my mind, and for me, in a kind and compassionate way. And it was a really painful process for me to realize that I had completely shut down my voice. And I had a lot of really good friends that helped me through that journey. And it was 6 years ago, I remember I began that journey, and I started practicing Reiki. I had a friend of mine who I did classes with, and I remember her saying, oh, there's so much tension in your throat. There was so much blockage. And sure enough, it was just, me regaining my voice again and saying, you know what, I'm doing this as a career, but in my heart, I want to be having these conversations with people like you, Danny, with topics like this, and because these topics are important, and it is exactly what you're saying. It is about holding space for people without judgment. And saying that's okay. You believe what you believe because that's in your heart, what you're saying, and what you believe at this moment, and I'm okay with that, without judgment.
Yeah. So when I thought about it and I sat with it, I realized that there's so many of us that don't even listen to our own voice. I have this weird ability where I can hear the voices of people's souls. And I kept asking, why are you giving this to me? I mean, I don't even know these people, and I'm sitting with them for 18 seconds, and I'm telling them things about themselves that are like, I don't have any right to do that. That's not my right. And the voice just said, just keep speaking. They can't hear their soul because there's so much noise inside their own head. So if they can't hear their own voice, how do we expect them to hear anybody else's voice?
Wow.
And so part of the work that I do, a lot of times now people come to me and they say, I'm just confused. I've been spending so much time running on this race to do what I have to do to live a life that I think I should live, that isn't one that I want to live because it's not even something that I enjoy doing. But I don't take the pause to say, what would I really like? What would I say if I didn't have to yell and scream and shout to myself? Like, what would be the simplicity of my silence? What does my silence say? So we live in a world where we don't listen to ourselves. We live in a world where we don't listen to others. We live in a world where we don't listen to the environment. We live in a world where we don't listen to people of different races and colors and borders and nationalities. Listening, by far, is the simplest thing to do in the whole world. You don't need a college degree to listen. To love and accept somebody is the simplest thing that you could ever do. To listen, to take 10 minutes. I sat with a homeless man on his cardboard box. And I said to him, what would you recommend that the world do to make it a better place? And he said, I would recommend that people take 10 minutes and ask somebody how they're doing. And just listen to what they say. And I said, how beautiful, but why is that so important to you? Why would you think that one thing would change the world? He said, well, some years ago, I had decided that I was a burden to society. I would feel the way people would look at me as they would walk by me on my box. And they had so much scorn and so much disgust, and they would yell at me sometimes, and they would even come up and kick me and beat me. I thought, why should I be here? I'm just going to kill myself that night. I decided to kill myself that night. And as soon as I had that thought, a stranger that I had never seen before came up to me and put his hand on my shoulder and said, "How are you, my friend?" And he listened to me for 10 minutes. And I went home that night and I said, I can no longer commit suicide because somebody cares about me. And he might be there tomorrow and he might want to know more. And whether he shows up or not, I know now that somebody cares enough to stop in the busyness of their day and spend 10 minutes with me. And he looked at me and he said, what is 10 minutes in the course of a lifetime? Can't we take 10 minutes to just listen to another person? And how important that would be if each one of us would take 10 minutes and just listen. But we're all so want to teach, and we also want to help, and we also want to fix, and we also want to change. All we need to do is love and listen. And that's
so
simple. Yeah, it's simple. We don't need to know how to do it. We don't need to get a degree. We don't need to be part of a religious order. We don't need to go join, live on one border or another. We don't need a certain color skin. We don't need to have a doctorate. We don't need to do any of that. We just need to have the compassion to care about another human being enough to listen to them. Mm-hmm. That's why I chose the word listen.
What was that?
That's why I chose the word listen.
I love it. I love it. It's so powerful. It's so powerful. I love what you just made me live into right now. Like I was there.
Beautiful.
That's amazing. I'm guilty of not, like when you said just 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And if I'm being fully transparent, 10 minutes for me is such a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it is. It is. It's for most people. When I say to people, just sit 10 minutes with your eyes closed and just listen to your own soul. Wow, 10 minutes. I can't do that. I'm too restless. Right? I can't just sit for 10 minutes. And that's okay. Then start with 1 minute. Start with 30 seconds. Everything. I used to go to the gym. Now my body's falling apart. But I used to go to the gym. And I was bench pressing 345 pounds. I was running 45 miles a week. But I didn't go into the gym the first day and lift 345 pounds. I lifted the bar without anything on it, which was 45 pounds. And over the course of some years, I was able to put a little more weight onto it. And then I was able to build it up. And then I hurt myself, and then I stopped, right? But start where you can. Mm-hmm. If you can't do 10 minutes, do 10 seconds.
Right.
And just sit quietly and listen. How amazing it would be. The sound of our silence is thundering. In my book, The Mosaic, I write about the street artist. And the street artist sits in the street and just makes art through different broken pieces that people bring him. And people bring him bags and bags of broken pieces of something. And when Mo, the main character, the protagonist in the story, meets him, he sits with him and he says, what are all these broken pieces? And he says, these are the stories of people who thought they were something a while back, but now just are broken and don't remember who they actually are. And these broken pieces tell amazing stories. But my job is to take the broken pieces of shattered lives and to put them together in a mosaic and to show them that this mosaic could not exist if they were still a picture or a pot or a frame or a beautiful statue. It only can exist when we bring all of these pieces together to create a piece of art that is far more exquisite than any one of those pieces on their own. Mm-hmm. That's the power of coming together. That's the power that comes when we listen. That's the power that comes when we listen to the stories of another human being. In my book, when Mo listened to the homeless man and to the street artist and to the gardener and to the trash man, he saw a person that was completely different than the one that he initially saw.
Mm-hmm.
When we listen, our perspective changes. When our perspective changes, we see a new world. When we see a new world, we innovate. When we innovate, problems become solvable because we see them in a different light. It's time to solve the problems of the world, but it all starts with listening.
Oh, that's just beautiful. One of the things that I love about your book, as I was reading it, because I bought it, and I really thought that I bought it for my son.
Yeah.
But I bought it for me, and as I was reading it, I remember thinking, wow, this really gets to the core of who these stories get to the core of who we are as human beings. And my son read most of it, and as I was asking him, what did you think about, the artist, or the trash man and things like that, and he would just look at me kind of like, oh, they're just stories. And I would ask him to explain, well, what did you learn? And I could see that it was an impact, not like when you read a story, but it was like almost a spiritual journey of him knowing, oh, that's how life really works. And it reminds me of, I think he's 13 now, but when he was 7 years old, I remember him saying, oh, I want to, play video games right now, because when you get older, people start having fun. You know how old people are, right? And like, it's almost like he knew that he had to live his life right now, because when you get older, it all turns to crap, basically.
Yeah. Wow.
And it just broke my heart.
Yeah, I bet.
In this book, the stories in this book almost like reminds you of, no, that doesn't have to be the case. And that's why I love your book and your work. Thank
you so much. That means so much to me, and it means so much to me that you shared it with your child. I remember you telling me that when we first met, and it touched me so deeply. Life is not hard. Life is actually very simple. We make it so hard. And part of what the process of listening allows us to do, when we listen, we have to let go of everything that fills our head, so that we can listen and hear what actually is coming in. Mm-hmm. And that process is the same thing we have to do with everything, I think, in our life. When we let go of all the belief systems, when we let go of all the things that brought us to this point, if we're happy living our life the way we are, and a lot of people are happy, you don't need to let go of anything. Like, just continue living a happy life if that's what makes you happy.
Yep.
But there's so many of us that feel a little unfulfilled, that feel like we could be doing more, that feel like there's, not that we could be better, but we're just not aligned with who we are as a human being, because we're not really listening to who we are. We're living a world of somebody else's creation. And the beauty about a story is, it's just so simple. It's just a story. And when people read the story becomes real for them. And yet, here's the thing that's immaculate about a story. Our thoughts turn into our words. Our words make up our stories. And our stories create our life. I remember when I was writing a book for the Andaz, a hotel in Maui, when they were just launching, and they were the most anticipated hotel opening I think it was the year 2014. They said, we want you to tell the story of our hotel. I said, great, tell me what that story is. They said, no, you understand, we don't have a story. I said, well, okay, how do you why do people come to Hawaii? They said they come here to fall in love, or to reinforce their love. So I said, okay, great, let's write a love story. I want you to send me your core values. And they sent me their core values, and from their core values, I built characters that had those core values. Mm-hmm. And one of the characters I built was a guy that every guy dreams of being. He was the most charismatic. He was the greatest warrior. He was the fastest. He swam the best. He was the best surfer. He was the one that every guy wanted to be. And so I closed the story by saying that every night he went home with another woman because every woman on the island wanted to be with him. And they looked at me and they said, Danny, you can't do that. This is a hotel. We can't have that reputation. We can't tell that story. I said, oh my God, I'm so stupid. Of course I can't do that. So I said, let me just change 8 or 10 words. And so I changed the end of the story to say, every night, even though he could have gone home with any woman on the island, he chose to go home to the one woman that he longed to be with during the whole day. And they said, now we're talking. Now that's what we want. That fits our values.
I love that.
All we need to do is look at the stories we're telling and change 8 or 10 words. And it'll give it a whole different meaning. If we're not happy with the story that we're telling, change the story. This is our book to write.
Yes.
We're the authors of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Just listen to what that story wants to tell you and make the changes.
I love that, because that was part of my journey, is I had to rewrite and rethink how I believed that I grew up. And as I continued my own personal development and my own and was seeking out my own spiritual path, I came to the conclusion that I was using all the wrong words and I had all the wrong stories.
Yes, yeah.
And years ago, just to share with you briefly, I used to say 20 years ago, oh, I grew up with an alcoholic father, and my mother was always depressed. And I'm like, I had the most beautiful parents because they taught me so much. They really did. When I sat down and I started writing the amazing things that they taught me, I mean, they're the reason why I have been able to accomplish, for me, some incredible things. And if it wasn't for them, and it was by sitting down and shifting my words, shifting my story, I was still being true and authentic to how I grew up. It wasn't easy, but it was the way that I was looking at it, and it shifted everything for me. So I resonate with you when you talk about this, the power of stories and the power of words, and the way that we shift and shape, and even if you change one word or 2 words, because for me, for 20 years, it's been constantly moving and evolving and shifting just one thing, and then all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're like, wow, my life is really truly magical.
I love
it. It is
that.
So magical.
What a beautiful example of what we're talking about. Same exact facts, different perspective, different life. Mm-hmm. I remember when I was in the seminary. Do we have time for another story?
Absolutely.
Okay. I remember
one more story, and then we'll let
it go. We'll let them come to see me at the event. If you want to hear more, okay.
Learn more at the event.
Right, totally. Which you absolutely got to come to, by the way. You got to come to this event. I mean, how cool is it, just for the name and title alone, and to see all the people that are there and that support us and have us support you? You got to come.
And you're my rock and roller, by the way.
Oh, I like that. I like rock and roll. Okay. Years ago, when I was in the seminary, the Rebbe who was training me super intensely to take over and be a Rebbe in a not only in a congregation, but he wanted me to start a seminary of my own, because he believed that strongly in what we would be able to do together. He looked at me one day and he said, you know what your problem is? He said, your problem is you're too honest, but you're not truthful. I said, what the heck does that mean? How can you be too honest and not truthful? What's the difference between honest and truth? He said, let me tell you a little story. He said, I want you to go home. I want you to imagine going home to your wife. You're not married yet, but I want you to be married. And going home to your wife and saying to your wife, honey, I thought about you almost every moment of the day today, except for 45 seconds when this beautiful woman walked by. I could not take my eyes off of her. She was gorgeous. What do you think your wife will hear? Will she hear that you thought about her for 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 15 seconds? Or will she hear, what the heck were you thinking about another woman for 45 seconds for? Being honest is saying that statement, I thought about you except for when this beautiful woman walked by. Being truthful is saying, I thought about you almost every moment of the day, and I love thinking about you because it really fills my soul. Being honest is saying, I grew up with an alcoholic dad. Being truthful is saying, the lessons that I learned from the parents that I had just are so exquisite. We need to be more honest, less honest, and more truthful.
Oh, I love that. That's, I want more of that in the conference.
Yes.
I love that.
And that's why we want you to come. This is just a little taste of what's going to happen. Because imagine when you get to speak your truth. Imagine when we can sit together person to person and talk to each other. Imagine when we have the opportunity to just listen and hear each other. Imagine how you'll walk away from this one day. You're going to choose how you walk away. You can walk away thinking you got a few nice words from a few nice authors or a few nice speakers, or you can walk away saying, I'm giving everything I have. I'm going to listen not to the words that people are saying, even in this interview. I invite people not only to hear the words that we're saying, the words just occupy our mind. The real transmission is a vibration of heart and soul. And so when the mind's occupied and it doesn't get scared and it doesn't say, no, you can't do that, then the heart opens and the soul opens and we're allowed to experience each other on a deeper level. That's where the transformation happens. That's where we rock and roll, now that I'm the rock and roll guy.
I love it, absolutely. So for anybody watching, I encourage you to come check out Daniel Levin. Obviously, you've heard he's quite an amazing human being, and I am so honored that I get to be on the same stage with him. I am looking forward to meeting everyone who's attending, and come check us out. We will have definitely a lot of time to do in open forum, just as we discussed here. I love that idea, Danny. Thank you. And Danny, thank you so much for being with me this Saturday morning. I appreciate you. I love you, my friend, and I look forward to seeing you in June.
Mirror, and thank you. My honor.